Welcome back. Let's do my September reading wrap up and my October TBR. So, the first book I read in September was When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. This was so good. I read this with my friend book club, but I did grab it from Aardvark back in May when it was published, and I loved it so much. Everything I have read so far by Nat Cassidy has been incredible. And it's funny because this is blurbed by Grady Hendrix, and one of the other books I read this month was The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, and that was a 1-star, horrible, racist, misogynistic, everything it tried to do, I felt like it failed at. And I think Grady Hendrix's style of writing horror stories about women um, speaks to this insidious misogyny within the publishing industry that I just don't understand. And one of the only male authors that I have come across to do this well is Nat Cassidy. So, Nestlings and Mary were both about female experiences with female main characters. So, in Nestlings, we have a woman who is postpartum, who has gone through extreme birth trauma, trying to figure out not only how to navigate her life now that she's disabled, but also how to raise her child, how to have her own identity as a woman, how to be in her marriage, and just live life. And it was so incredibly done that I was positive Nat Cassidy was a woman, or at the very least, not a cis man. And turns out he is. So he has to just be one of the most empathetic people to be able to learn from others' experiences and condense them into his stories and then represent them in a really genuine and honest and a way that just really honors those experiences, because then Mary is about a woman who is going through menopause and who is experiencing what it feels like to live in a world that no longer values her as a woman. Truly just impressive. But this one is all about fathers. So we have our main character, Jess, who is a struggling stand-up comedian working at a diner. She ends up having a rough night. She goes to clean a bathroom and gets stabbed by a needle, and she freaks out and goes home. While at home, she hears a strange noise outside, goes outside, and finds a boy hiding in her bushes. She takes him inside her apartment and is trying to figure out what's going on with him, what to do, when his father shows up. And we can immediately see exactly why he is so terrified of his father. And it just goes from there in a very surprising and unique way. What you think this book is going to be about is nowhere near what it actually is going to be about. And I just thought it was brilliant. I love the way Nat Cassidy is writing horror. So absolutely pick this one up. It was so good. And if you read any of these by him, never skip his forewords and afterwords. He says himself in the end of this one that Nestlings, Mary, and When the Wolf Comes Home are all sort of existing in conversations about like motherhood and fatherhood and his experiences. And so I think having that extra context really makes the stories shine. And if you can listen to those forwards and afterwards, I would highly recommend that. Yeah, I just think he's a really introspective and, like I said, really empathetic author who I'm just excited to continue to follow his career. Then, like I said, I did read The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and I did a whole video about why I hated this book so much on my TikTok. I think it might have been too long to post to shorts, but this book tries to tackle themes of sexism, misogyny, abuse, racism, sexual assault, but does not interrogate these themes in any way that is meaningful to the overarching plot. I was particularly horrified by the representation of women and the things that happen to these women. He uses the scary naked old lady trope where her mother-in-law walks into the room naked because she's senile and she doesn't know what she's doing. And he describes her body in such gratuitous detail that clearly the only thing that he thinks is scary about that scene is just the fact that she's not clothed. He does it again when one of the main characters friends is assaulted and she helps care for her after the assault, and he describes how old and saggy and gross her body looks. The vampire wasn't even that vampiric, and like I'm cool with different interpretations and representations of vampire and the vampire myth. But specifically, this vampire preys upon predominantly Black children, and when he feeds on the children, he induces extreme sexual pleasure from them. Now, that is not new. The sort of romantic and like sexual nature of the vampire myth is rooted in its conception. It's part of the origin of that myth. So many representations of vampires deal with maybe taboo relationships or repressed sexual urges or different identities or maybe themes of queerness. Like we've seen this done in ways that specifically interrogate that idea of sexuality and sensuality. However, I do not think it added anything meaningfully to the plot to have the vampire attacking an underage girl and to have us as the reader witness that girl in the throes of passion. I felt like that was incredibly inappropriate, especially when we don't get any character depth from that teenage girl who is being assaulted, and she just sort of gets sent away for like mental health resources, and she like doesn't really remember what happened. There's no follow-up, and in fact the mother is like disgusted with her daughter for enjoying it. There was also no need for the vampire to be predominantly attacking Black children and Black people in the town if there was going to be zero meaningful interrogation of racial politics. The spoiler, but the whole book ends with all of these prim and proper white ladies being too squeamish to actually kill and clean up the vampire, and the Black nurse is the one who does it. I hated this book so much. I think if people are liking it and are enjoying this thematic interrogation, it is because of the ways that they are interpreting it and not for any textual evidence in the novel itself. I no longer trust Grady Hendrix as an author, and I will not be reading anything else that he writes. And I unhauled it. So goodbye. Another horror novel I did love was Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle. This was so fun. He packs such an incredible amount of character development and plot in such a short novel. This was creative, this was funny, this was gross, scary, it's everything you could want. I'm just a huge fan of his writing now, and I think that all of his efforts in writing all of his satirical, goofy novels have paid off in the way that he has strengthened his abilities as a writer. And I think I'm going to read Bury Your Gaze next because I want to and I loved this. Also, someone said that Bury Your Gaze was good for anyone who is a D-Steel shipper, and that's me. So then I read What Hunger by Catherine Dang. This was good, but I don't think that it fully delivered on everything it was attempting to do. I think what it did the most strongly was writing the immigrant experience in America. A lot of effort was put into representing our main character's experience as a first-generation Vietnamese American and the way that her immigrant parents have had to navigate life in America. I think those themes were done really, really well. There were some other themes of identity and trauma that I don't think were necessarily handled as well. Definitely think it's one to check out if this is the genre that you're interested in. But if you've never gotten into this type of like weird girl horror before, I don't know if this would be the first one that I would recommend. But again, I've also not read a ton of these, so I think there's better people out there to get those recommendations from, but I'm always looking to expand my repertoire. And so I will still be reading more books like this. Then I read Artificial Wisdom by Thomas R. Weaver. This was really, really good. I had a lot of fun with this. I did not read his original version of this that was indie published. I've only read this version. So now I am kind of curious to go back and read the other one to see how it compares, because I do own it. But essentially, this book takes place in 2050, and the world is suffering a has been suffering climate catastrophe after climate catastrophe, and they have decided to elect a world protector, so a leader that will be in charge of the entire world, whose job it is to try and get humanity back on track so that they don't die of mass extinction due to climate-related disasters. And our two frontrunners are a former US president who potentially, allegedly, has a scandalous past, and an artificial intelligence named Solomon, who has been governing a floating city fairly successfully for the past couple of years. And so our main POV is from a journalist who is attempting to just tell the truth, and he gets an anonymous tip about the former US president that could potentially sway the election, and so he starts investigating, and it sort of goes from there. This was extremely fast-paced and extremely fascinating. There will be a sequel, so you don't get a super satisfying conclusion, but I think if I could find things to critique about this, they were mainly just in some of the tropiness of the characters. Some of the side characters felt a little bit flat, and I would have enjoyed just a little bit more depth to them than what we got. But overall, I still had a really good time with this. And the author seems like a pretty chill dude, so that's always cool too. Then I read Rebecca. I have not read a ton of classics in my life. The main ones I've read have all been during my college days. I read a lot of the Brontes. I read some Mark Twain. I've read a decent amount of Shakespeare. So yeah, I have like a soft goal to like slowly read more classics, but it's not like something that I'm hugely prioritizing. But as someone who's not read a ton, this was so accessible. The prose was beautiful without being overly purple or convoluted or complex, and it was written in first person, which made it feel a lot more modern compared to some other classics that I've read. And I was just simply fascinated by the character work done in here. So we have our unnamed narrator who, while working as a lady's companion in Monte Carlo, meets widower Max de Winter, and they end up connecting. And because she doesn't want to go to America with her awful and annoying boss, he ends up proposing to her and they get married, and he takes her back to his home Manderley. Now, Manderley itself is a character in this novel. It has such a presence to the story, and similar in vibe to Jane Eyre, Max's deceased wife Rebecca, from like the first chapter or two, has this looming, omnipresent, haunting vibe across the whole novel. Our narrator is constantly trying to fill her shoes, and the way that she is so self-conscious and just desperately lonely, and the fact that she remains unnamed is just so interesting. I really love this one. There's so much to unpack here when we talk about themes of sexism and classism and relationships and love, and I just really liked it. I really liked it. Then I read The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince by Robin Hobb. I believe it is recommended that you read this after Ship of Destiny and before Fool's Errand. I forgot to do that, so I read it after Fool's Errand. I think as long as you read it somewhere in Tawnyman, because of the themes that it is talking about in that novella and what it connects to in Tawnyman, you'll be good to go. But I do understand why it's a good one to read before Fool's Errand. But it was good. It was like 100 pages, adds a lot of really interesting context to the way that the wit and the witted ones are perceived in this world. And honestly, I would just read anything that Robin Hobb wants to write about this world, I will read. So had a great time with that one. And I'm really curious to see how the implications at the end of the novella feed into the rest of the books. Like, I want to see how those connections do or don't pay off. And last but not least, my peak reading of September was Tawnyman. I read all 3 books in the Tawnyman trilogy, so let's just go through and do my ratings really quick. Infinity Stars to Fool's Errand. This was beautiful. This ripped my heart out. Just incredible. So much good character payoff. So many wonderful scenes between characters that I will treasure forever for this series. Just loved. Golden Fool, I gave a 4.75. really reminiscent to me of Royal Assassin, where there's a lot of court politicking and a lot of things being set up for later, but not a lot of stuff happening. Not a lot of high stakes things happening until maybe the end of the book. But lots of good character development and just a lot of really good, interesting time spent at Buckkeep, which I did really enjoy. And then Fool's Fate, whew, 5 stars, just incredibly paced. I was flipping pages like crazy getting through this one. I read it in like a day and a half, so I'm sure I missed things, and there will be things that will really stand out upon a reread, but my God, this was so good. And I want to do more of like a deep dive video on, with spoilers, on sort of my reading progress of the Realm of the Elderlings so far, but the way that this thematically connects to the live ship traders specifically was brilliant, and I have not stopped thinking about it. I loved it. I loved it so much. No surprise. It is, what day is it? Filming this is Sunday, October 5th, and I have already finished Dragon Keeper and Dragon Haven, so I'm making great progress on the Rainwild Chronicles. Yeah, I'll probably finish those this month. So these two were already on my October TBR, and I've already finished them, so we're good there. Then because of the length of these, I feel like I can definitely finish City of Dragons and Blood of Dragons this month without issue. Really loving this. To me, these are Robin, specifically so far, because I've only finished these, this is Robin Hobb's version of like a historical romance. I loved it so much. I ate it up. Then because the romance was really hitting in Dragon Keeper and Dragon Haven, I need something else with romance in it, so I'm going to be picking up The Blighted Stars by Megan O'Keefe. This was a fairy mail from Lauren, my bookbender on TikTok, so thank you, Lauren. I'm really excited to get to this. I've heard amazing things, and also, please, drop any other recs for romantic sci-fi, because I feel like that's a really underrated genre crossover, and one that I need more of desperately. But yeah, really excited about this trilogy. I have already started Ghostfish by Stuart Pennebaker. This is a litfic about a woman whose sister passes away, and then she moves to New York to kind of try and like find herself and feel better about her life. And a ghost fish appears in her bedroom, who she decides is her sister, come back to see her. So this is beautifully written. I am already just absolutely enamored with the prose. So having a great time with this one, and I know I'll finish it soon. Then I ordered Salt Crop. This came out on the 30th of September. I really loved The Deep Sky by Yumi Kitase. Stardust Grail didn't hit as much for me. I think it ended up being a lot more like philosophical than I thought it was going to be when it was advertised as Indiana Jones in space. So that was a little bit of a letdown. Maybe if I hadn't heard that blurb, I wouldn't have gotten my hopes up so much. But I'm still really excited. I like her writing, and I'm intrigued to read this. Getting in with some spooky vibes, I will be reading Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Haven't read this one, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I didn't realize that it's only like 270 pages, so I think that'll be a good classic to get under my belt. I got One Bad Night and Other Stories by these people: Kay Chronister, Del Sandine, Kylie Lee Baker, Rachel Harrison, CJ Lee, Jennifer Thorne, S.A. Barnes, and Stephen Graham Jones. This is an Aardvark box exclusive. They published this themselves for their 3-year anniversary, and people were so excited about both this and the Bride and Mate special editions that the app crashed on October 1st, but their customer service is amazing. They seem like a really great team, and I had no issues getting my order in, so absolutely go check these guys out, especially if you need good horror. That team, they seem to really, really love horror, and so there's always really good horror picks for each month. Then the 2 books I do not own physically are Circe by Madeline Miller. I am reading this with my friend in real life book club. Looking forward to that. I'm going to go pick up Mate on Tuesday when it comes out. obviously, I really enjoyed Bride, so I'll be grabbing Mate. And then I need to get caught up with Sun Eater before Shadows Upon Time comes out. So I will be hopefully getting to Ashes of Man before the month ends. And if not, then I will just have to do Ashes of Man and Disquiet Gods next month. Thankfully, Shadows Upon Time comes out at the end of November. So I've got time. I can do it. And I'm really excited to get back in that world. The combination for me of the story plus the narrator, Samuel Rorken, I believe, makes that such a peak reading experience for me. I love the way he has brought that story to life, and so I have really been enjoying reading. Since I have the ebook and the audiobooks, I do the with the Kindle where you can listen as you read and it highlights the words. I really, really like that as opposed to the Whisper Sync where you can switch between the Audible app and the Kindle app. I have found that by playing the audiobook through the Kindle app, there are fewer issues with you getting like yanked back to a previous spot. And so then it's a really seamless experience of either only listening or listening and reading at the same time. I just really, really enjoy that. Obviously, don't love supporting Amazon, but I bought the books and audiobooks like a year and a half ago. So I've got it. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to use it. And I do think it's a really good accessibility feature. And so I have to talk about it, even though, don't love supporting Amazon. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I read in September and what I'm excited about for October. I'm sure it will change a little bit. Like I said, I have been craving some more romance. So if there's time, I might read, what is it, Wild Card by Elsie Silver. And then I also have a couple Omegaverse books downloaded on my Kindle. So we may or may not be dipping our toes into that world, but we'll see. Anyway, in the meantime, I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.